They say practice makes perfect. I say practice sucks. It's boring, repetitive, and you have to do it pretty much every day if you want to get better at your instrument. Fortunately, we live in a time when it's never been easier to come up with ways to avoid having to practice. 100 years ago, musicians only practiced their instrument because there was literally nothing else to do. No TikTok, no Netflix, no Call of Duty, no Pornhub. Practicing by candlelight was the only way to pass those long evening hours. It was either that or read a book, and musicians then liked to read about as much as musicians do today, which is not at all. So they practiced their instrument because it was the only thing they could do. But you have the luxury of being a 21st century musician. Between things like instructional YouTube videos, abundant sheet music and guitar tabs, online digital tuners, and metronome apps, it's never been easier to learn to play an instrument. It's also never been easier to learn how to avoid practicing it, whatever your instrument may be. In this video, I'm going to help you get really good at your instrument, really good at avoiding practicing it. With these 8 great ways to avoid practicing your instrument, you'll never have to play another mode or scale ever again. Number 1, watch videos. Guess what? You might not realize it, but I've already started helping you to avoid practicing your instrument. You could be practicing right now, but you're not. You're watching this video, which is what you should be doing. One of the best ways to avoid actually practicing your instrument is to watch videos about how to better practice your instrument. Or, better yet, watch videos of other musicians practicing their instrument. By constantly looking for new ways to get better at practicing by watching videos, you can avoid having to do any actual practicing. Just tell yourself that you're only going to watch a video or two for inspiration before getting started, and the algorithm of whatever platform you're on will take care of the rest. It'll keep suggesting new videos that you won't be able to help yourself from watching. Before you know it, hours will go by and it'll be too late to practice your instrument for the day. You'll log several valuable hours of practice avoidance and be even better at it when it comes time to avoid practicing tomorrow. Number 2, make videos. If I'm being honest, I have no idea what I'm doing half the time. But I know what I'm not doing right now, practicing my instrument. That's because I'm too busy making this video about practicing to be doing any actual practicing. And if I can do it, so can you. All you gotta do is start a YouTube channel about your instrument and you'll never have time to practice this thing again. You'll be far too busy obsessing over coming up with witty responses to the nasty comments you get and checking your channel's analytics every 5 minutes to have time for anything else. Making videos about practicing your instrument is a fantastic way to avoid practicing your instrument because it only requires talking about practicing your instrument. No actual practice required. But since you'll be doing so much talking about it, your viewers will think you dedicate lots of time to practicing your instrument every day. But in reality, the only instrument you're truly dedicated to, the only one you practice at least once a day, is your beloved skin flute. Number 3, find a new tool. If you're waiting for a new album to drop from the band Tool, it could be a while. But if you're looking for some new tool to help you get more out of your practice sessions, there's no shortage of gear out there that can help. You will, however, have a shortage of time to practice your instrument if you're always out and about on the hunt for new gear to take your practice sessions to the next level, which would be level 1 since you're currently at level 0. But don't worry, you can comfortably stay there as long as you spend all the time you should be practicing wandering around Guitar Center looking at all the instructional books you have no intention of buying, or endlessly scrolling through all the practice apps in the Play Store you have no intention of trying. There's always going to be some new piece of equipment, some new software or app that promises to help you get more out of your practice sessions. But by spending all your time looking for those tools, you can rest assured that you'll have less than 0 time for actual practice. Number 4, the times they are a-changin'. One of the best ways to get better at anything, whether learning to play a new instrument, speak a new language, or whatever, is to have a set time where you sit down to practice every day. Conversely, one of the best ways to avoid it is to constantly be changing your practice schedule. You can even eat up at least one entire day's worth of practice time at the beginning of every week by spending it crafting a complicated chart of your planned practice times for the remainder of the week. By coming up with a ridiculously complex practice schedule with different time blocks planned for each day of the week, you're bound to miss 1 or 2 out of pure forgetfulness, another 1 or 2 due to unforeseen scheduling conflicts, and maybe 1 or 2 more because by the time that day's scheduled practice time rolls around, even though you've been doing nothing all day long, you're too tired and unmotivated to pick up your instrument. Having a dynamic practice schedule might seem like it'd be easier to follow, but for the overwhelming majority of musicians, it's not. It is, however, a lot easier to avoid. When it comes to your practice schedule, flexibility is key because that will guarantee your practice muscles will only be flexed minimally and occasionally, if at all, in reality. And I hate to tell you, but you're living in denial. Denial of the fact that my brand new album, Denialism, just dropped on all streaming services and is even available as an actual physical CD. It's 12 tracks of raw, unapologetic chaos inspired by punk rock, metal, and all the other genres I'm always talking shit about. So if you enjoy loud music with fun, lighthearted themes like nihilism, class struggle, loneliness, and existential dread, Denialism is out now. So go stream, download, or buy. I don't care why. Maybe you like me and you want to show your support. Maybe you think I suck and you want to hear the album I spent an entire year producing by myself so you can go and relentlessly make fun of it. Either way, I don't care. Just go stream, download, or buy my new 100% DIY album, Denialism. Link in the description. Number 5. Hard to reach. Practicing your instrument is already a huge pain in the ass. But if you can make it an even bigger pain, you can make sure you never have time to practice again. That's because by the time you're done setting up your gear, you'll be far too tired to even lift a finger, let alone pick up your instrument to practice your fingering. What do I mean? Let's take the guitar, for example. If you keep your guitar on a stand in your room that's always plugged into your amp, which is always plugged into the wall and is always within arm's reach, it's going to be really hard to avoid practicing the thing. In less than 2 seconds, you can go from laying in bed to being in practice position with the guitar in hand and the amp turned on. That's just way too convenient. What you need to do is overcomplicate the process as much as possible. First of all, take your guitar off the stand, unplug it, put it in its hard-shell case, lock it, and then stick the case deep in your closet. Then, take your guitar cables, pedals, capos, picks, straps, and other accessories and put them away, each in a different location. And lastly, since your amplifier takes up too much space in your room, you shouldn't keep it there. So unplug the amp, pick it up, and give it a nice snug hug so you can lug it downstairs and plop it down on a rug so you can tug it over to the far corner of the basement where you keep your collection of coffee mugs and a stack of back issues of Hustler and Jugs. And then, when it comes time to practicing tomorrow, by the time you've got the guitar out, the amp back upstairs, and everything else ready to go, well, what do you know? A quick glance at your watch will show that although you're finally ready to go, you just totally missed your entire practice window. So it's time to put everything away, but you can try again tomorrow. Number 6. Minor adjustments. Practicing can be a major pain, but by constantly making minor adjustments to your instrument, you'll be able to refrain from having to practice the thing at all. No matter what your instrument is, there's always something that can be tweaked, tuned, changed, added, subtracted, or adjusted. Guitarists have some great options. You can eat up an entire practice session restringing a 12-stringed guitar. Or, better yet, get yourself a locking Floyd Rose. It'll take you months of daily practice just trying to get the thing set up and in tune. By the time you do, you'll have avoided months of actual guitar practice. Pro tip. Use extra light strings so the high B or E string snaps when you eventually do get down to practicing. Then you can start the whole Floyd Rose setup process over from the beginning and get out of yet another month of practicing. Another instrument you can endlessly adjust even more than the guitar is the drums. You could sit down to practice like you planned, but then you notice your floor tom sounds a little bit flat. Time to change the head. By the time it's been changed in tune, you've already eaten up half your practice time. Then you notice your cymbal stands are 1/8 of an inch off from where you want them. So you move them back and forth little by little, getting them just right. With only a couple minutes left of practice time, you grab your sticks. But then you notice your double bass pedal is a little off. So you trade the sticks for a drum key and spend the remainder of your practice time adjusting the pedals. And just like that, bam! Another practice session avoided. Those are only 2 examples, but just about every instrument needs some sort of maintenance. Woodwinds need reeds replaced, brass instruments need to be oiled and greased, and harps, with their 48 strings, make 12-string guitars look like 4-string basses. Unless you play like the triangle or something, you should have no problem finding ways to repeatedly adjust your instrument long enough to avoid having to repeat yet another boring practice session. Number 7. Create a pre-practice routine. Going from laying around doing absolutely nothing to sitting up straight, focusing your attention so you can practice your instrument can be a real shock to the system. That's why it's important to come up with a pre-practice routine so you can ease into your practice time, or, breeze right through it. Your pre-practice routine can include anything that may help you to prepare to practice your instrument. An inspirational Spotify playlist is one way to go. Some musicians find that listening to a few songs helps them get in the mood to practice. Most musicians, however, myself included, are never in the mood to practice and find that listening to a few songs only puts them in the mood to listen to a few more songs, and then a few more after that. Before you know it, you've wasted hours listening to music and your practice time for the day is long gone. Another great pre-practice routine is to do some sort of intense physical warm-up. Finger stretches, tongue twirls, stick twirls, shit like that. Throw in some yoga poses, some pranayama breathing exercises, a couple sets of jumping jacks. By the time you get warmed up, you'll be so wiped out that you'll need to lay down. You'll be too tired to work on any songs by Nirvana as you spend the entirety of your practice time spread out on the floor in full shavasana. With a good enough pre-practice routine, you can get out of actually practicing just about every day. If you make your pre-practice routine complicated enough, by the time you're done with it, you're in post-practice time. A time when you can bitch and whine when I post online that, well, Post Malone's rhymes are fine. His face looks like a 4-year-old had one hell of a time practicing drawing a bunch of lines, scribbling that ugly-ass design. Number 8. Become a multi-instrumentalist. You might think that the more instruments you play, the more you'd have to practice. But in reality, the more you play, the easier it is to get out of practicing your instrument. Because you don't have an instrument, you've got several. Being able to play a bunch of different instruments makes it super easy to avoid practicing any given one. Even though I was all about slapping my bass around yesterday trying to figure out some Primer song, today I'm not feeling it. What I am feeling is the drums. So instead of picking up my bass to continue practicing the Primer song like I'd planned, I sit down at my drum kit to work on the intro to Hot for Teacher. It's going to take a lot of practice to get those triplets up to speed, so I plan on practicing it again tomorrow. But when tomorrow rolls around, I'm not in the mood. I say fuck the drums, grab my Jackson, and start tapping away at Hot for Teacher's guitar intro. If you can play more than one instrument, you've always got at least one excuse to not practice. Me? I can play several instruments. I don't know how to practice any of them, but I can play them, which means I've always got something to distract me from having to do any real practicing. What I have had lots of practice at, though, is avoiding how to practice. If I'd spent even a fraction of that time actually practicing an instrument, I'd be a virtuoso by now, but I'm cool with being a mediocre multi-instrumentalist, because being good enough at multiple instruments gives me multiple reasons to avoid ever having to practice any of them. Now you should have no trouble getting out of practicing your instrument. With these 8 tips, you can make sure you never level up your musicianship ever again. However, if you actually want to get better at your instrument, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is that you're going to have to practice this thing, and you're going to have to practice it a lot. The good news is that practice doesn't have to suck. It certainly can, but it doesn't have to. Who says practice has to be boring? Well, besides my old piano instructor, music class teacher, and pretty much every other music educator I've ever met. But what do they know? If they were any good, they'd be out performing somewhere, not teaching. If you want to get better at playing your instrument, once you've got the basics down, practicing boring-ass scales and modes is only going to get you better at practicing scales and modes. If you want to get better at playing the things you want to play, practice playing those things. I guarantee you'll find it infinitely more enjoyable than running up and down a melodic minor scale for the millionth time. Don't get me wrong. Learning theory, building stamina and dexterity, working on technique, these are all important. But music is supposed to be about enjoyment and expression. And I can't express enough how much faster you'll progress as a musician if you learn to enjoy your practice sessions. You think Hendrix got good at the guitar by reading chord charts and practicing scales? He got good by relentlessly experimenting, playing around, and trying new things. In other words, he fucked around so we can all find out that even if you don't waste a second of time on traditional practice, you can still become one of the greatest musicians of all time.
You're so annoying.
If you want to hear some of my original music, my new album Denialism just dropped on all streaming services and is also available as an actual physical CD. Link in the description. If you like this shirt, it's available in lots of sizes and colors at MusicBSharp.com, along with lots of other funny music-related merch. Link also in the description. And if you want access to special episodes of MusicBSharp, visit my Patreon page where you can find exclusive content, get early access to regular videos, and more. Now, go listen to my new album Denialism on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you listen to music.